Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm in Denver, so I'm local. I would love to share with you today some gems that have helped support me in my human growth and development, and how appropriate, because that is what you all are setting out to do, is to not just be better at your own human condition, but to actually hold space for other people to be better at their human condition. I call it a human condition because I feel like we are conditioned all the time by our society, by our family, by our thoughts, by everything. And we can recondition at any moment. And so I like the idea of a condition. It doesn't have to be a negative, but it's malleable. And that's really what we are. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit, very briefly, is my background, so that you have a sense of where I'm coming from and that we can connect a little bit more. And then I want to just jump right into a lot about the brain. So I am the founder of the Neurosculpting Institute in Denver, but we are global, so we have a huge online presence, and we have students all over the world. We have trainers abroad and here in the States. What we do at the Institute is we teach people how to understand their brain and their central nervous system, and how that affects behavior, and how that affects social interaction, and our collective sense of being seen, heard, validated, and safe in this world. So it really is vital to understand how to connect with each other, to have an understanding of the brain, because the brain is orchestrating and interpreting and implying and inferring and making all sorts of stories up about these interactions. So we teach people a lot about the brain, and then we teach people a 5-step brain entrainment / meditation practice to very strategically go in and work these parts of the brain with a lot of focus. And the reason that I've devoted my life to this work is because I was a meditator since I was 12. Meditation is my lifeline. But it was also a coping skill that I used very well and was very grateful for. But I have to be quite honest that my meditation practice was very much about escape the pain, defer the pain, and find solace, which we all need. But it wasn't healing what was triggering the pain. It wasn't healing my triggers. And I developed, after being struck by lightning when I was 15 on my birthday, I developed a seizure disorder. And what I learned after many, many years of having seizures, which flatlined me on many occasions, I learned that stress was inducing these seizures. I was not epileptic. It was determined I was not epileptic, but that these were stress-induced. And the first light bulb went off. How could I possibly have unmanageable stress? I'm not abused. I didn't grow up in a war zone. I'm fairly privileged. I grew up middle class. And I've been meditating since I was 12. How could I possibly have stress that would induce this sort of condition? Well, I was hypersensitized by the lightning strike in my vagus nerve, which we'll talk a little bit about. And what I learned was that I needed to understand my central nervous system and my peripheral nervous system to understand why stress would exacerbate a cranial nerve to the point of causing these seizures. And so I really went on a mission just to understand my own brain, my own dysfunction, my own condition. And what I discovered was a complete surprise. I discovered that my science, my neuroscience education, caused my meditation practice to go 10,000 times deeper than I ever dreamed. It caused me to be able to go underneath the unnameable stories and triggers and grip and unwind that stuff and do it very strategically, and then to have new stories placed and replaced so that I could grow from a different platform, grow from a new foundation. I had no idea that was going to happen. And what I discovered in trying to formulate a way to tease my brain into no longer having these seizures was that meditation and me were at a very surface level. And that if I could put some structure and backwards engineer my meditation practice into something that neuroscience was telling me, this is what needs to happen first, second, and third for your brain to really shift. Well, who was I to ignore what science was saying? So what I did was I incorporated it, and I infused it into my meditation practice with very strategic architecture. And I stopped my seizures. And you're not supposed to be able to stop a brainstem originated central nervous system autonomic function like a vagus condition, dropping your heart rate. You're not supposed to be able to do that, but you can. And you can do lots of things when you have the formula. And so what I want to share today with you is a little bit of background information so you get a sense of that formula that is generic enough to be a universal law, but can be specified to your unique experience and tweaked. So I want to give you a language today so that you can take everything you're learning here and infuse it with application, knowledge, and a deeper understanding of what it is you're going to need to do to connect to your audience when you go out into the world and try to serve in the way that you've chosen to serve. So that's my plan for today. And in order to do that, I'm going to get very excited about brain stuff, and I'm going to talk a lot, and I will answer your questions. We'll get to Q&A. And for those taking this online, if you have questions that are not answered in this presentation, you can always email us at info@neurosculptinginstitute.com, and we will answer your questions based on this presentation. So let's get into a little bit of a journey. And I want you to just indulge this journey for a moment, and I want you to think about all the times in your life where your fear has inhibited you, or your "I'm not good enough" came up, or your sense of victimization arose. Those times where all human beings have. And as those times are kind of accessible in your mind, I would ask you to notice how you functioned when you were like that. Did you function in a contracted way and in an inhibited way? Or did you smile and exhale and expand into the world with love? My guess is probably not that, right? Okay, so did you tense up? Did your breathing get shallow or sharp? Or did you hold your breath? Did your throat get that lump and get constricted? Did your head start to throb? Did your gut get nauseous? Did you start to tremble? Did you start to want to be invisible? Or did you start to want to rage against the machine? These are absolutely normal responses to when our limiting stories arise. These are physiological responses. So first clue in the equation is if we separate mind and body, we are not going to be congruent. That's the first huge revelation I had. My meditation practice, for no fault of it, but for my own fault, disassociated myself from my body world. I was more than this body, so why should I listen to this little body? That's kind of what I brought to the table, and that was not serving me. The moment I realized, wait a minute, my limiting thought of I'm not good enough, or this is dangerous, or I'm a victim, or whatever that was, You mean that actually does express through the body and might be telling me something? And what if I could mitigate the body's symptoms? Could I then soften the thought? Do I first have to go to the thought to heal the body, or can I go in through the body too and soften the thought? Well, we have a two-way communication channel, precisely from the vagus nerve. So, we can work at the thought level to make the body world shift, or we can go in through the body world, through the breath, through movement, through shaking, through dance, through chanting, through vibration, through music, and soften the thought. We've got unlimited access and doorways in to shifting our world. And I want to drill that first point home. Your body is not to be ignored if you want to transform. It cannot be ignored. Now, it may not serve you the way you'd like, and it may never serve you the way you like, but it can't be ignored. Because if it's ignored, you are only working half the equation, and you will never get the sum total answer. That's just logic. So we're going to talk a little bit about the physiology of what is happening when you and or your clients or your audience is experiencing the grip that disables them. And that grip is going to be anything from a diagnosed disorder to a perceived story, to a chemical imbalance, to a traumatic experience. So there's no limit to the expression of the story, but they all come from the same place. So I want to talk about what is the place they come from. And for this, I want to have you think about being in utero. Now, obviously I'm not going to ask you to remember that. That's a whole different course that we're not teaching here. I want you to think about human development. That's what you're here for. So I want to share with you that we start as a tube. We are a neural tube in the first few weeks of being, the first few weeks of the first trimester. And first we're a plate of stem cells. And then we're a tube. It sort of folds in on itself. And it's called the neural tube. It's also called the notochord. And this notochord, very soon in the first trimester, begins to look like a shrimp. Right? You've all seen the pictures of the little, it almost looks like a shrimp. It's got a slight bulbous top. That's the cord. And what that cord is the spinal cord. We begin as a spinal cord. Everything grows from this tube. So I want to draw for you the brain so you get to see how it comes out of this tube. And this will make sense in a little bit. So I'm going to draw a side section of the brain. This is if I were looking this way and sliced my brain in half, you're looking at the inside of the right hemisphere. And this is going to be spinal column here. Or actually, I should say this is brain stem. And then it goes into spinal column. So what we have is a brain stem right here. And then we have mid structures, lower brain structures, mid structures, front brain structures, okay? So if we're looking at, we grow from a tube. We are this first. And then when that bulbous head looks like it forms on that shrimp, what we actually are brain stem matter. We're creating the brain stem in that first bulbous thing. So in evolution of our embryology, brainstem is first. That's what is wired up first. Then comes some mid structures over here. So we're developing like this. This is the last piece of the tube to be formed. This is the front of the brain. So why this is important is because I want to tell you the physiological response we talked about when your stories come up. Where does that come from? Where does that live? It lives and comes from here. So when we go into our limiting stories, what we're doing is we're going into what we call limbic functioning. Our limbic system is our very primitive fight, flee, freeze function. The reason we have a primitive save myself response is because if I didn't, I'd be dead. And so would you. So you have to have a self-preservation mechanism to keep you defending yourself against threat. Now this is a gift. The limbic system is a gift. It is the reason we are all able to converse right now, because you're alive. And you are alive, I guarantee it, because your limbic system has saved you even when you didn't know it. It has caused you to jump precisely at the right time when a car didn't see the stop sign and you were crossing the street. It caused you to go like that when a sharp object came flying by, and then afterwards you laughed nervously like, wow, I almost got hit in the head with the scissors. That's your limbic system saving you over and over and over again. But because it is first, it is wired up in the first trimester. Therefore, it can be used in the first trimester, and the second, and the third, and immediately when you're born. So it is familiar and exercised even. So let's talk about some of the options that live in the limbic system. There are 3 options. They tend to get lumped together, and I want to separate them because they are very different, but they're all partnered and related. Brainstem functioning. I'm writing the word freeze in case it doesn't come out well. Brainstem functioning is where we control our freeze response to stress. What is a freeze response? Normal spectrum freeze response is if you're in a scary movie and you go, that's freeze. You just held your breath. You gasped and held it. Or you go like this and you try to hide your eyes and become invisible or small or unseen. Or you blush when you're embarrassed or even shamed. That's all normal freeze response. If you're walking in the woods and you hear something and you go, see, and your eyes get big and your head orients and tilts and your body freezes, that's normal freeze. That is reptilian. What do I mean by reptilian? It is the most primitive response we have. It comes from the brainstem. It's ready to go in utero. It is our first option. And it is called reptilian because it is exactly the same response that reptiles have. When reptiles want to evade a predator, they go inward, they drop the heart rate, they don't put body heat out, they become thermically invisible, they freeze. That's what we do. When the brainstem says, danger, danger, freeze. We try to go still, and it is not the same thing as fight. It's a down regulation. To stress, so it is a stress response, but it is a very slowing response. Now you can still feel your heartbeat in your chest when you freeze, but chances are your vagus nerve originating in the brainstem is trying to quiet the internal system so that you go invisible and immobilize. It is the immobilization response. So what does this mean? This means, let's say you are 2 days old and you don't have the ability to lift your head or move your hands and arms or legs, and you get scared, traumatized, startled, what's the only response you have? Only response you have is freeze. Therefore, if you are stressed profoundly in the first month or so of life, or the first couple months, you're going to become very familiar with freeze, and it may very well likely become your go-to response for the rest of your life. In fact, Dr. Stephen Porges, who wrote the polyvagal theory, has postulated that this is the cause of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, that this is a manifestation of the freeze response. And I can tell you from my seizures, my vasovagal freeze seizures did cause me to flatline on multiple occasions. That is death. So, freeze is designed to save our lives, but because it is reptilian and because it is brain stem, it is very difficult for mammals to sustain a freeze response in an extreme way because our brains need too much oxygen. We don't have reptilian-sized brains. Therefore, accessing that reptilian response in a too extreme version is very damaging to the nervous system and the brain if it becomes the go-to response. Now, I don't want you to be afraid of it because we all have it. It is within normal spectrum. It's absolutely fine. We're designed to access it. You are designed to gasp and hold your breath at the scary part of a movie. You are designed to go like that if you hear something in the woods in the dark. That is perfectly normal access to freeze, and that will save your life. Because if that is a predator in the dark and they don't hear you or see you, you're good. So it's a gift until it's overused. Just like everything is generally a gift until it's overused. So this is kind of how we come out of the gate. We come out of the gate ready for freeze. And we actually come out of the gate ready for fight, flee. Our bodies need to catch up before we can do this with our hand. We need months of learning, this is my hand. So it takes a while to get to use freeze or flee. So where does freeze and flee live? Right here. I'm gonna change this up a little bit. I'm gonna erase this, I'll add this back later. Fight and flee is about here. It is called primitive, but it is not reptilian. It is mammalian. To fight and to flee is a more sustainable stress response to the brain because it will not deprive you of oxygen, because it will not hit your autonomic nervous system and drop your heart rate. It will elevate your heart rate, which means you are going to breathe faster, and oxygen is not going to be an issue. So, in the spectrum of freeze, fight, flee, more sustainable is fight and flee. Now, of course, socially, that is not preferred. Socially, people want to see you go to stress. So socially, we want people to get quiet, but it's not necessarily the best option. So we want to access flee and fight as mammals with large brains that need oxygen. This part is also wired up in utero, shortly after this one. So we actually do come out of the gate neurologically ready to access any of those three options. But again, it just takes a little time for the body to catch up. So if you are traumatized in utero, you will have a familiar understanding of how to use stress hormones and how to interpret them. That means if the mother is stressed during pregnancy, you will be born having already used your fight, flee, freeze system. You will be born having already created an imprint of how to process adrenaline and cortisol, which means this is exercised sometimes at birth and definitely right away as soon as you're born, because you're going to startle at a loud noise. You're going to fall, and you're going to be afraid of walking down the stairs. You're going to have all sorts of things in your day-to-day life require your fight, flee, freeze to save you. That's how you learn to preserve yourself. So we are wired to this as our first understanding of the world. So let's take a step back. Again, I want you to think about those times where your limiting stories are active, right? Tell me, or think really, of some of the ways your loved ones might describe you when you are in your fear or depression or your anxiety or your whatever, or your rage against the machine. My guess is you're going to hear words like contracted, angry, violent. Now this doesn't apply to everybody. Skeptical, jaded, cynical, bitchy, reactive, judgmental. I might have said that already. Kind of these words. Okay, so we come out of the gate familiar with this, wired to this. And if those are the aspects of our human condition that seem to be easily accessible when we are limbic, well, then we predispose to experience the world through these personality traits. It's very easy to default to this. We're going to talk about how easy it is to default to this when we get to understanding the function of a neuron. You will start to see how efficient this system is. But my guess is that none of you is proud of that list of descriptors. And that if you were out there trying to, meet the partner of your dreams, maybe on an online dating service, that those are not the descriptions you're going to put of yourself. Right? Okay. You're going to put very different descriptions. What descriptions are you going to put down about yourself? You're going to put down, I'm patient, I'm compassionate, I'm fun, I'm spontaneous, I am intelligent, I can problem solve, I can be creative, I'm motivated. You're going to put all this stuff. Now, it's not a lie, but it's not your limbic profile. It's a very different profile. So we'll talk about that profile in a few minutes. And I want to talk more about the limbic profile. Okay, we need to understand a little bit more about what's going on here. So we have, this is a bunch of cabling in the brain that runs right smack in the middle between the two hemispheres. So I want to give you a little brain orientation. Our two hemispheres, left and right, are mirror structures. They don't do specifically exactly the same thing on each side. They do very complementary things, often the same, but they have nuances. There's a left and a right side, which means when I say the anything, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the hippocampus, that is not technically correct. You have two of everything, and they don't touch. They are completely separate from each other. Your hemispheres do not touch each other. In fact, there is a cap, a dura, a flap of like a skull cap that actually comes down between the hemispheres to prevent them from touching. So how do your hemispheres seem like one brain? There's cabling between them that connects them. The cabling is called the corpus callosum, and it is a conduit of cabling that's job is to get left and right side to talk to each other all the time so we can function as a whole-brained individual. So that's what this is. Underneath it, well, we have lobes. Let me go to the lobes. If you put your hand right here on your forehead, your hand is on your prefrontal cortex. If you scoot it back just a little bit, that's the rest of your frontal lobe. So there's a frontal lobe and then the prefrontal, which is right here. If you put your hands above your ears, but low, like right above the ears, those are your temporal lobes. And if you were to put your fingers right above your ears and have them go right through your skull and meet in the middle, that's the main area of the limbic system. We'll talk about that in a bit. If you put your hands in the back, top, you are in your parietal lobe. If you put your two fingers right about here, you are in sensory and motor cortex. And then if you put your hand right back here, you are in your occipital lobe. Now these lobes have to talk to each other. They have to communicate simultaneously about all things. And different things happen in the different lobes. But when we go to the limbic center, remember drilling right through here with both fingers, meeting in the middle, we have two structures. We have, on either side, we have a structure here and a structure here. The structure here is the hippocampus, and I'm going to tell you a story about that in a minute. And then the structure in front is the amygdala. And remember, I'm saying the, but there's two of everything. So I'll just write this here for you. Okay. These two things together are orchestrating your response to your story. So let's talk about your story. I made you think about a story, whatever that was, the time when you had fear come up or self-doubt. And maybe some of you actually thought about it. And then we talked a little bit about the body response, and the personality traits that go with it. So what is neurologically happening is this, and I'm going to tell my children's story, which is now a children's book, soon to be published in a week. Yes, I'm self-publishing it, but I'm going to get you a copy. So we have this story where wherever you are in the brain and in the many lobes of the brain, I asked you to think of something. And in order to do that, you had to reach into your memory, right? So what you did was you took a walk from wherever you were. You took a walk to the library. And you walked in the doors, and Mr. Amygdala opened the door for you and said, "Oh, come on in. It's good to see you." Now, what lives in this library is all of your stories. The good, the bad, the ugly, the euphoric. Everything lives in this library. And you walk in through the door, and Mr. Amygdala let you in. And you walk over to the main desk, and Mrs. Hippocampus is sitting there. She is the librarian, and she looks at you, and she says, "Oh, you're back. How nice to see you." And she has a pile of books right there next to her on the desk, and then files and files and rows as far as your eye can see of all the rest of the stories. And she says to you, "What story would you like today?" And she says, "Would you like the story of the time your best friend gave you a hug and it felt so good, or the time that you got what you wanted for your birthday and you felt seen and loved, or the time that you had a great achievement in 3rd grade and you felt like, yes, I can do this. Would you like any of those wonderful stories? I can get them for you." But they're all the way in the back, but I can get them for you. And you say, "Well, I want the story that you could give me the fastest because I'm on a lunch break. I don't have a lot of time." And she said, "Well, the story that I can give you the fastest is the one that you keep coming back for. And it's the fastest because I'm so tired of putting it back on the shelf that I just leave it right here on the reference desk for you." And you say, "Yeah, what story is that?" And she hands it to you. She said, "It's the one where you feel really terrible about yourself and you feel like you're worthless." And you're like, "Yeah, that's the story. That's the one." Because it's going to take her a long time to find the other ones. Why will it take her a long time to find any of the other ones? because you haven't frequently visited them. So she forgot where they are and has to look. But the ones you frequently visit, she doesn't put back anymore. They're right there. So you grab this story from Mrs. Hippocampus, and you're going to go read your story outside in the beautiful sunshine because it's your lunch break. And you walk out the door, and Mr. Amygdala is holding the door for you, and he looks at you and he says, "What story did you get?" "Oh, that one again." "Well, we have to dress you like the character. You can't have a good story without really dressing and feeling like the character." So he grabs the perfect coat off the coat rack and puts it on you. And it's perfect for the character, but it's really too tight, so he's buttoning it up. And you can't breathe, and so now you're holding your breath. And the sleeves are too tight, so now you're all crunched up here. So you've got stress and tension here, and you can't breathe. And you can't swallow, you definitely can't eat anything. And then he said, "Well, this character needs a hat." And he puts the hat on you, and it's way too small, and now your head is pounding. And then he's like, "Well, don't you need a nice necklace?" And he puts on this choker that's too tight and you can't swallow. And then, just for fun, why not have some ankle weights so you feel so exhausted just being. And so now you can't breathe, you have a pounding headache, you can't swallow, you can't eat, you feel sick to your stomach, you can't move, and you can barely walk. And so you sit down and you read the story, and now you are fully experiencing the emotional qualities that go with this characterization and this story. And that is because your hippocampus retrieves your memories and pieces them back together from wherever it retrieved them from. The amygdala colors that story with the appropriate reliving. But your body really needs to get on board, because this doesn't just stay in your head. So in order for you to really feel the full effect of your costume, your amygdala signals a structure right here called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is a gland who has this amazing ability to take all the neurological story in your head and translate it into a body experience by taking the story out of your brain and converting it into a cascade of hormones, like adrenaline and cortisol, to ignite your mobilization response, because the story says, on some various level and shades, it says danger. Whether the danger is fear, not good enough, whatever the story is, ultimately to the body it's threat. So your hypothalamus is signaling the pituitary and the adrenals to mobilize you to protect yourself against this threat. Now this threat, when did it happen? However many years ago? But it's happening again right now because I went to the library. And it's happening again right now because when it happened the first time, I wrote everything down in full detail and stored it like it was important. You know what that's called? When you take a moment and you write it in such detail because it's that important, that's called neuroplastic. That's what it means to be neuroplastic, where you have a moment that becomes meaningful because of its importance. And what the brain equals when it's neuroplastic is that event becomes neurologically imprinted, stored, and now retrievable at any moment in time. That's what it means to be neuroplastic. It's one of the things that it means. So now we have this mobilization. And these hormones do this miraculous thing in the body. They change your physiology. This is alchemy. When you can take electric, intangible, unmeasurable thought and turn it into hormones and a physiological shift, that is alchemy. So what is happening? Normally, when everything's great, you've got your resources in the midline. Blood, oxygen, glucose is giving you fantastic digestion, optimal immune system, perfect bowel movements, pancreatic function, liver function, nice slow heart rate, slow deep breath, soft muscles. You are great. This is rest and digest. But then you went to the library, which you could have taken any story out that you wanted, but you took that one out that was already 10 years old. You relived it, and you shifted out of rest and digest as though that thing were happening right now. And so that takes the resources from the midline and does something very different with them. It says, go, go. We have to go. We either have to flee or fight. Freeze is a little different. I'll talk about that in a minute. So we divert blood, oxygen, and glucose away from the midline to the muscles. All the muscles. The jaw, the shoulders, the biceps, the quads, the glutes, every muscle, the psoas. And here you are, contracting. Why do you contract? Because it's not just because resources go there, it's because in order to run fast or punch hard, you have to have torque. You can't do that from a soft space. You have to have torque. So your muscles are contracting because they think they're going to give you strength and speed. But because the story isn't really happening right now, you're not really going to kick it or run from it. So what do you do with all the torque? You sit in it and you marinate. And then nothing happens to dissipate it. This is why we can't ignore the body. Every little threat-based thought you have engages this system to small degrees or profound degrees. And this system is a physiological system. And there are two ways to tell it to stop. One is to stop the thought, but you know how easy that is. The more you try to stop the thought, the more it comes. Okay, so that's not going to work so easily unless you have a method. The other way is to go in through the body and change the body's physiology, which will then send all that message up through the vagus nerve and tell the brainstem, we're good. Physiology's been changed, we're good. So, vagus nerve goes from brain to body, body to brain. Change the thought, it'll change the body. Change the body, it will change the thought. How do you change the body when you are in this sympathetic arousal stress state? This is going to be your lifeline. This can be a lifeline for all of the people you serve. And that is to shake. Shake. It's not a metaphor to shake it off. And not this kind of shake. This is not shaking. This is pretty or graceful or cute. That's not shaking. This is shaking. That's shaking. It has to be like that. It has to be its own wave that takes over. You can start the wave, but it has to be vigorous and it has to take over. And that takes the torque in the muscles and uses it. And if it uses it, then it's done. And then the muscles soften and say, oh, we used everything you gave us. We're good now. And then you can have blood, oxygen, and glucose come back to the midline. And the vagus nerve can tell the brain, whew. In fact, just now. So the first part of that shake, I induced. The second part, when it came down here, that was its own. And now I'm very hot. Because even if you are not stressed, but you shake, you unwind stuff that you didn't even know was there. And so now I have a surge and a softening at the same time. So shake it off is what is speaking directly back to this part. that got all worked up and doesn't know how to turn off its incessant chatter, your body can communicate the signal. You can also do deep breathing. You can also do yogic breathing in through the left nostril to cause a parasympathetic response and out through the right. You can do an exercise practice. It doesn't have to be just this kind of shaking. It can be anything physical. You can dance. You can sing your heart out. If you do something that singing will elongate the breath, the longer the exhale, the more you come into the midline. So the longer you exercise, the more you unwind the muscles, the longer you sing or hum, the longer the exhale gets. So those two things will help you downregulate from this. If you don't unwind this, you will create a muscle memory. You will create a state of being that says contraction is how I live. Your muscles will remember this state of being. Your levels of adrenaline and cortisol will change the amount of adrenaline and cortisol receptors on your cells, which will then only need that level to be functional or higher. This undissipated contraction can cause an adrenaline contraction addiction. And that is not abnormal. It's normal for what is happening, but it is not supportive unless you need it. So I want to really frame this as it's all about efficiencies. That's it. It's not about you're dysfunctional. It's not about you're not normal. It's not about your trauma is worse than my trauma or their trauma is worse than mine, so I can't help it. It's not about that. It's about, wow, look at how efficiently my brain and first trimester system has wired itself up to save my life. What I have to do is learn the signals to tell it, not now, honey. Thanks. A little later maybe, when we are being chased by the bear in the woods. But now, we're in the movies. We're good. Or I'm in line at the bank and I don't really need to be going into my anxiety right now. So, this system is efficient. Why is it efficient? This is going to help you understand even more about how miraculously efficient all of our dysfunction can be. I'm going to draw for you a neuron. This neuron is related to me and Diane, because that's its hair. Okay, so there. This is a neuron. A neuron is another word for brain cell. But we don't just have brain cells in the brain. We have neurons in the spinal column because the entirety of the spinal column is gray matter with some white matter in it. And then we have neurons in our organs, in our skin, in our muscles, and in our gut. The most prolific place for neurons to live is the brain. There's about 86 billion there. There's about 100 million in the gut. And then there are very minimal amounts in organs and tissues. But this is a generic brain cell. So I want to explain the parts and pieces of this so that I will link it to your limbic system doing what it did for you very efficiently. But we have to understand the mechanism of this first. This is a cell body. A neuron's job is to speak to other neurons or to remain quiet, so it is not speaking to other neurons. Everything in the brain is networked, and nothing happens with just one neuron. Everything happens with a network of discussion. So for you to blink your eye, that is a network of neurons. The same network of neurons every time. Talking, breathing, perceiving love, hugging, having a desire, saying yum after you eat chocolate cake. All of that is a choreography of various networks of neurons giving rise to these behaviors, experiences, and personalities. And that happens because this decides to talk about something. I have a stimulus worth talking about to the next guy, who will then find it worth talking about to the next guy, so that we can have an orchestration of something. Now, this cell body has to get the stimulus from somewhere. It has to collect it, right? Well, how does stimulus come in? It comes in through thought, it comes in through smell, eyes, skin, nose, ears, balance. It comes in through sensory and non-sensory places. So we've got a lot of stimulus that can come in. And this guy needs to have that stimulus be interesting enough to talk about. If it's not super interesting, I'm not gonna get off the couch and call anybody. I just dated myself because you don't have to get off the couch and call anybody. But in the old days, when the phone was attached to the wall and you had one in the kitchen, you did have to get off. Okay, so this net is what's gonna collect a bunch of different stimuli and send it to this guy to see if this guy thinks that's interesting enough. So stimulation is coming in through these guys, which are dendrites. These are all dendrites. Dendrites collect. They collect what? Stimulus in the form of electricity. So they are sending electric signals to the cell body. If it's not enough, the cell's going to go, meh, nothing. If it's enough to exceed this cell's very particular threshold of interest level, then this is going to say, oh, I will talk about that. So when the electric current exceeds the threshold, there is an action potential, meaning the sum total of this electric charge has exceeded a threshold, and now the electric charge gets summated and sent down a channel, the old-fashioned phone cord, right? To beyond the wall, to some person on the other side of the world, also on a phone. How does that happen? Well, the charge comes down, this is the axon. And the axon needs to preserve that charge so it doesn't leak out, because it wants this charge to get to the end. And in order to preserve the charge so it doesn't leak out, this has to be insulated. It has to be insulated with fat. Uninsulated axons are very short because they don't have to preserve a charge for long. Or if they're long axons that are uninsulated, well, that's a disease, and that's called multiple sclerosis. So the axons that are long enough that need insulation need the insulation. Otherwise, no charge will get through. It'll leak out. So now this message gets through, and there's a person over here on the couch in Iowa waiting for the phone to ring. And here's some fabulous, interesting story. So the message has to go from this all the way here, and there's a gap. And that gap is the synapse. So there is a space between neurons. They do not touch. And then electricity really can't cross an ungrounded gap without going wherever it wants to go. So electricity doesn't. So electricity comes here, and the electricity opens gates that only respond to electricity. And when it opens those gates, chemicals flood out. These chemicals are stored here waiting, and the chemicals flood out into the space. The chemicals are called neurotransmitters. And then the dendrite net of the next neuron picks up the chemicals, they bind to the ends, open more gates, and that polarity shift causes an electric surge, which now can travel to the next cell. So it's electricity, neurons, electricity. And so that is what is happening in a network of neurons when you had that thought. When you had that thought, and you went into the library and pulled it out, what happened was you took the network that excited around that story the first time it ever happened, and you reanimated that neurological network, and you went zzz through the whole network that has been imprinted. And this is what you did. But here's why I want you to understand the functioning of this. Because every time you go to the library, and every time you activate the same network, its job is to be efficient for you. So the more you use something, the more your brain thinks it's supposed to be even more efficient. Let's automate this, because he likes to use it. Okay, so what happens is the more you use it, it starts to grow. This is what my gray hairs look like. They're totally different texture. Anyway, so it starts to grow.
Yeah, really.
More dendrites. It's use it or lose it. The neuron thinks you're using me a lot. You must really want to use me. I'm going to help you. Let me help you. I'll just grow some more dendrites for you. Thanks. And then what happens if this net gets bigger? It can collect more. If it can collect more, it can signal more frequently action potentials from this neuron. And if this is signaling more frequently, you've got a higher voltage more frequently going down this axon tail, which means you are barraging that synapse with neurotransmitters because you keep opening those gates, which means this guy's going to go, you need to use me, I'll grow more dendrites. And now the whole network grows. This is the neurological meaning of what you focus on grows. This is literal. So what happens? This cell body and dendrites, that's your gray matter. Gray matter grows. You grow it. You shrink it, and you grow it. So if you are thinking and retrieving those self-limiting thoughts that are wired to be easy access since birth, then you are potentiating that network, making the network trigger happy, increasing the volume of your gray matter around that network, which means that becomes the strong muscle. What then are you going to use to meet the world in all manner of speaking? The strong muscle. It's like if I tie your left hand behind your back and you can only use your right hand for a year. And great, when I untie your hands, if I throw a knife at your face, you're going to block it. Fantastic. But if I go to shake your hand, you're going to still reach with that same defensive hand because this one's been unused. That's what your neuron networks do. We hone them. This is also a definition of neuroplasticity. That which we focus on grows. And neuroplasticity is a three-pronged formula. Time, focus, and repetition equal growing this network. Any network. Any network. What does that mean? Although we're efficient and default to efficiency in a negative manner, and I'll tell you why in a minute, we are equally able to self-direct our plasticity to create better new experiences and stories that with that magic three, time, repetition, and focus, become imprinted and grow our gray matter. And this is measurable. This is not a wish. This is not a faith-based hope. This is measurable. You could grow dendrites in a cat teaching him a new exercise in 24 hours. We can do this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about food to support plasticity, and then we'll move into the counterbalance of all of this. We'll move into the, yay, good news. Okay. Well, the reason why it's easier for you to, for us to wire to defense and threat is because the limbic system is a parallel processor. It is the only multitasking capacity we truly have. It has to get input from eyes, ears, nose, balance, skin, and thought. Because if any of those things detect danger and we didn't process from there, we're dead. So limbic system has the capacity to process all streams from all lobes of the brain simultaneously, but preconsciously, meaning the action potentials that go zzz through the limbic system are measurably faster than the action potentials that go through conscious thought. So it's pre-conscious and multitasking and going, give me what you got, I can process it all right now, and here, before you even think about it, here's my response. Did it save you? No, but it probably should have. We're good. Okay, so that's this. Now let's talk a little bit about food that supports this, because you're all going to eat today. And I don't want to make you feel guilty about what you're eating. I want to inform you about what you're eating. I am not one to preach an ethical or moral diet. You choose whatever works for you in terms of your moral or ethical stance on food. I'm just telling you what the brain needs. It doesn't care about your morals or ethics. It needs 3 things, and 3 things only. It needs fuel for this cell. And the fuel, the go juice, we get from glucose. So you need glucose. Now there are really bad places to get glucose and really great places to get glucose. The really bad places, meaning when I say bad, I mean that glucose goes in so fast that it spikes me so hard and dips me way too fast. That's a bad use of glucose because my body has to then recuperate and it never catches up. That's white refined sugar, and that's a lot of processed grains. Slow sugar is the best for the body. Slow burn, it's sustainable. It won't dissipate in a flash and crash you into a blood sugar crash. And that is vegetables. Vegetables are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are where we get our glucose. People, vegetables are carbohydrates. So when I hear people say, I'm on a low-carb diet, I'm eating salad 5 times a day, but I'm not eating bread. Well, you're eating sugar all day. Slow sugar, you're still eating sugar all day. Vegetables are carbs, the best kind. So if you're going to have sugar, this guy needs vegetables. This guy doesn't care about vegetables. The axon wants fat. It needs fat, because guess what? There are these little tiny cells out here called oligodendrocytes, and if anyone speaks Italian, what do you call, what is it, the butter that you dip in? It's olio or something. Same root. Oligodendrocytes produce fat. They produce myelin, and they just hang out next to the cell, wrapping it in sheaths of fat. But they're not going to do that unless you eat fat, because they don't make them out of nothing. You got to input something. So you must eat fat, which is the big, big aha moment for the food pyramid and everything that I grew up with, which is low fat actually puts your brain into a dementia-like starvation state. You must eat fat, the healthy fats. Now, for those of you who eat meat, meat is considered a healthy fat if it comes from a healthy source. Of course, there's all the ethics around it. So if you don't eat meat, you have tons of sources of healthy fat. Avocado, coconut, flax seeds, nuts, all sorts of places to get fat. However, you still have to convert those fats into what the oligodendrocytes need. But there is a way to not even convert it. There's a way to eat it directly, 1-to-1. I'm eating the very same makeup of fat my brain needs. And that is if you eat DHA. That is a particular kind of fat. Where is it found? Salmon, sardines, anchovies. And for those who don't eat fish, you can get DHA supplements from marine-based algae. So, sea life has the exact same fat makeup as what these guys need for this to take the signal from here to there. Now, again, we want to preserve the functioning of this, because if we can feed this what it needs, then we get to be neuroplastic in a way that we choose. If we don't feed that what it needs, you're not going to change any story. If you are working desperately to change your self-esteem and you are consuming refined sugars predominantly, you don't have neuroplastic abilities. you're going to be wishing and hoping for a very long time. So we have to support through the body what spirit and human connection and mind wants from us. And then the third thing, so we have carbohydrates, fats. The third thing, what are our neurotransmitters made of? If we don't have neurotransmitters, no cell communication happens. So does anyone know what they're made of? Proteins. They are amino acids. And we must eat protein. In fact, they're called essential amino acids because it's essential we eat them. If you are protein deficient, you are brain compromised. So go get your protein. And if you are a meat eater, the neurological recommendation is grass-fed beef. Why? Because grass has all the essential amino acids, but we don't digest it. Who does? A cow. Okay, so that's the rationale for grass-fed beef. Now, many of us have issues with meat. I get it. Go source your protein in a way that you are getting a diverse and enough amount of protein. So I'm going to give you our nutritional therapist's recommendation for how to eat. And this is something you can modify for your lifestyle. Her recommendation is you put, this is revolutionary. You put your food on a plate, you sit at a table. Why? Because if you're on the go, you are not having resources in your midline. You're not going to digest that or absorb those nutrients. Eating on the go is a paradox. So sit, put it on a plate. Why on a plate? Because then you can see what's on there. Do I have a fat, a protein, and a carb? You can see that easy on a plate. You can't see that when it's wrapped in tin foil and you just open the top of it and you crunch on it. So, 3 meals a day, fat, carb, protein, and she recommends 2 snacks so that blood sugar stays like this the whole time instead of this. And if it stays like this, you are going to have optimal brain functioning. So we can talk more later or in the questions around particular foods if you'd like, but your stories are not disconnected from what you consume, from how you behave, from who you socialize with. They're all reinforced or mitigated by everything. So let's talk about the great balancing equation for all of this. When we talked about the brain, I had you put your hand right here. Your prefrontal cortex. This is correlated to us being civilized human beings. In fact, animals who have larger and larger prefrontal cortices are known to have more complicated social structures. So chimps, their prefrontal cortex is like 17% of their brain. And they've got a lot of social hierarchy and use of tools. And then humans, well, we've got like 23%-ish of our brain is prefrontal cortex. And we've got fancy clothes and things like events and parties and things that make us feel yay and all sorts of complexity. Does anyone know what animal has way bigger? Dolphins' prefrontal cortex is 41% of their brain. So I'm just saying they might have a plan. And we are probably not smart enough to even see it. But, so theoretically, we have the largest prefrontal cortex in the mammalian kingdom. And that has lent itself to our civilization. So when you think of that profile that you want to write for the partner of your dreams, like we said earlier, creative, spontaneous, motivated, compassionate, loving, empathic, forgiving, non-judgmental, that's all prefrontally correlated. So what does that mean? It means your best self traits that don't need to save your life, need to enrich your life, don't live in the same place as the traits you use to save your life, right? But remember, in embryology, what comes last?
That.
Prefrontal cortex. But how last does it really come? Very last. Okay. We have one. We have one when we're born. It's not like we don't have one. But it is not wired up. It's like when the cable company delivers all of your equipment and you're like, yay! But how do I set it up and turn it on? We're born with the equipment, but the cable guy didn't come yet. And the cable guy is going to come and take a really long time. How long is the cable guy going to take to wire up the front of your brain to its full capacity, to its full 287 channels of on-demand this and that? 23, 25 years. Okay, prefrontal cortex takes about 25 years to fully wire itself up, which means we have to be taught patience, delayed gratification, empathy, sharing, inhibiting improper social behavior. We have to be taught this. If you look at a toddler, you can see they don't have a wired up prefrontal cortex. They're going to pick their nose while they're talking to you. They're going to go to the bathroom in their pants because it's easier. That's what my daughter told me when she was 2.5. She said, why would I want to go on the bowl when it's just easier? Okay, I have no argument for that. Until your prefrontal cortex is fully wired up, your civilized best self traits are not always accessible. And they have to be neuroplastically supported with that 3. Time, focus, repetition. Time, focus, repetition. That's the magic formula. So, when we are limbic as teenagers, or limbic as children, or limbic as young adults, we have a 25-year leap, an advantage on the prefrontal cortex. And why does it take so long for that thing to wire up? Because it's going to do far more complex computations than the limbic system. It's going to do slow computations that equate to all that is intangible. This is tangible. What's not tangible is, I wonder if my goal is to be a doctor, how many years I need to put in and all the discipline, and then to hold myself to that discipline for some unrealized goal that's 10 years in the future. That's complex, because that is not tangible. And the prefrontal cortex is very busy needing to figure that stuff out. So computation capacity is infinitely greater, but it takes a lot longer. So you have to support it with proper food. Fat will help you wire that up. Positive emotional connection will help you wire that up. And prefrontal exercises will help you wire that up. We can talk about that in a bit. But here's the gift. Here's the huge gift. This is what I really want you to grasp. When that is wired up to its full capacity, it has the power to override the limbic system like no other part of the brain. Why? Because it uses blood oxygen and glucose on an exact inverse relationship. So if you think of a seesaw, and on this end is the person in the limbic outfit, and on this end is the person with the prefrontal outfit. Generally speaking, when we are limbic, that side's going to be way, way up, right? Which means if they are inversely related, prefrontal is inhibited. It is so far down in use of resources. So when we inflame limbically, we have actually inhibited use of the front of the brain. Literally, neurologically, we have cut off use of those traits. That's why when people tell you to just relax, that's why it doesn't work. That's why it gets you more limbic. Because your prefrontal cortex is like, I can't hear you, I don't know what you said, and your limbic system is like, what? Okay.
If we can exercise the prefrontal cortex and feed it, and use meditation, which is measurably shown to increase activity there, and exercise, which is shown to measurably increase activity there, and eat healthy fats, which is measurably shown to increase activity there, then not only could we balance that seesaw, but we could tip the scales anytime we wanted. Anytime you lower the limbic response, you raise the prefrontal activity. And anytime you intentionally raise prefrontal activity, you lower limbic response. They are in dynamic relationship. What does that mean? It means when I told you to shake, what was the purpose of that? To dissipate that limbic contraction. So literally shaking will downregulate limbic, which means it's upregulating prefrontal. You want to be your best self in the next moment, then you have to end the previous moment. You have to end it. So if you had an issue with a partner or a client or something, and you can shake that out, then you get to step into the next moment more prefrontal than limbic. And that means you will experience the next moment differently. You will experience it through the stories that equal prefrontal stories, the stories of joy or positivity, or that time where you felt accomplished in 3rd grade because you answered the question, or whatever. When we go to the library, we get to choose the story. And if the story has a limbic charge, limbic seesaw side's going to go up. But if the story we choose has a prefrontal lens of wonder, curiosity, joy, and even humor, then the prefrontal lobe gets activated. So what are we choosing to reinforce? This is the question. Now some of it, again, is subconscious, but that means this. Hope is not lost just because we're stuck in a subconscious loop. What it means is we have to set aside time every day to craft a story, a better story, or to focus on an experience that was okay or benign or joyful, and exercise that neural network, which is going to activate the prefrontal cortex, and it's going to exercise it. The more we exercise it, the more robustly it can function for us. So, this is the dynamic, this is the formula we want to look at, is what can we do to consistently activate the prefrontal cortex in a way where it downregulates the limbic. This is how things go from contraction to expansion. This is mapped to rest and digest. This is mapped to our greatest compassionate human achievements. And this is at the heart of it. And these 2 lobes are simply a formula. Simply a formula in dynamic relationship. So what I want to talk a little bit more about is some personality traits of prefrontal and limbic, so you get a unique sense of them. And I'm going to talk about the limbic system as fast and furious. Now, I also don't want to vilify the limbic system. It's also the thing that ignites when we are seeking great food, great sex, great partnership, great dreams. That's also the limbic system. It's not a bad center, it's just overused. So in terms of its personality when we overuse it, it is fast and furious, meaning it'll get you where you want to go, but maybe not in the manner you want to arrive there, right? Like if you're calling an Uber to pick you up, and 2 Ubers show up. One is a Lexus, and it's brand new, and one is the muffler's dragging, car's dented, there's like smoke billowing out of both the windows and the muffler, so from the inside and the outside of the car, and it's like a 25-year-old car, and they both show up. They'll probably both get you to your destination. the limbic system will be the beat up car that gets you there, but might get you there with slight, and you might not want people to see you get out of it, so you might be a little embarrassed about how you got there. It could probably hit some curbs and it doesn't really matter. It could probably have a little fender bender and just keep going. And it's gonna get you there beat up, maybe on time. And the brakes are pretty bad, so it's gonna screech to a halt and it's gonna not stop gracefully. And you're gonna catapult forward and maybe hit your head, so then you get there and you've got some bruises. That's the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is the Lexus. You're gonna get in that thing, and it's gonna be a whole new environment, and it's gonna be a smooth ride. Really sweet. And you're gonna be like, hey everybody, look at the car I'm getting out of. Look at my prefrontal cortex. It's gonna be like that. But if the car gets into a fender bender, you will not get to your destination, because that driver's not just gonna ignore it and keep going. You're gonna have to sit there through the police report and the insurance claim, because this is a Lexus. And you're gonna get in the car and maybe you've got a little mud on your shoe and the driver looks at you and goes, can you wipe your shoes, please? This is a Lexus. So, prefrontal cortex is expensive to maintain. And it is a diva. We'll show you that in a minute. Limbic system doesn't care. Just get in. We'll get you there. So, in certain situations, you don't want the Lexus. But your limbic system will always be there for those situations. In most other situations, you do. And that's when you want the limbic system to be like, I didn't call you today, and you keep showing up. So, it's all about balance. So let's talk a minute about the diva nature of your limbic system. I'm going to grab a piece of paper for a minute. Can I grab one from someone and a pen real quick? And the only reason I do this is because I have to write down this exercise, otherwise I'll stutter through it and that will negatively affect it. Do you guys need a break? Yeah. Okay. How about we take 5 minutes? Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay, because I can go for like 8 hours, so okay, take 5 minutes. So we've discussed the effortless wiring that we all have to our limbic system. We discussed that this is efficient and that it's designed to save our lives, and we discussed that it's just a little overused. And we talked about the fact that our brain cells will just respond to input and grow their responsiveness based on how much input over time we give that same network. We also discussed the balancing, the prefrontal cortex as the balancing part of the brain for all of this. One of the things I do want to say about this network is that as these dendrites grow and this spreads, let's say this network is the network that we retrieve when we remember a really bad time during, maybe it was a traumatic event where we were assaulted. And let's say I'm just making this up. I was assaulted by a man in a red polo shirt. Okay, I just made that up. And this is the network. So every time I remember that moment, it's this. But now these dendrites are growing because I'm remembering it a lot. And this grows so wide and vast that it potentially starts to connect to other neighboring networks that were never connected in the first place. Which means, let's say the neighboring network is that time I hung out with that friend and he was wearing a red Hawaiian shirt and we were having, we were at the movies. And now all of a sudden this network grows and it connects. And suddenly, when this is activated and it sends signals, it's now sending signals to the other one as well. So now suddenly my fear memory of a man in a red polo shirt equals also the set of all things that includes some of the other stuff. Like, it's not just red polo shirts anymore, it's any shirt with red in it, because the guy in this one was wearing a red Hawaiian shirt. Or now it's, I don't know why, but I went to see that movie and I couldn't shake my memory of this. We start to expand the networks, which start to reach other networks, which start to bleed those memories into these themes. So this is also what it means to say what you focus on grows. If you focus on the network and it expands its reach, then all other things it touches become tainted with that charge, because they likely don't have as strong a charge as that one did. So the strong charge wins. And now that is how a fear of one thing becomes a fear of the set of all things that look similar to that one thing. One person betraying us becomes a whole distrust of that type of person, or that gender, or that whatever. We grow our biases because we are growing these neurological networks, and we then actually live an illusion. Because, I mean, we're living an illusion a lot of times anyway, because we're experiencing in this moment that which does not exist. We're experiencing in this moment that which we retrieved, which is already 10 years old. So that in itself is an illusion, albeit a very real experience to the body. But now, when we taint all things that resemble, even slightly, the initial thing, now we are overlaying a story onto things that have nothing to do with it. And this is what we do. We filter our world in a way that categorizes and lumps things together that never had anything to do with anything. And so we become very limited and contracted people when this happens. So I want to talk a little bit about Hebb's law, because that's going to play into when I talk about neurosculpting the process. And this is important for you to know, because when you are out in the world, serving the world, you are going to experience your clients, your students, your audience will need to know about Hebb's law, because they are walking products of Hebb's law. Hebb's law says neurons that fire together wire together. So I kind of just described it. If this network fires at the same time as this one, and we're growing this a lot, when they fire at the same time, they will grow dendrites towards each other. When they grow dendrites towards each other, that means they connect and they are one large network. So let me give you an example. Pavlov trained a dog to salivate at the sound of the bell. He used Hebb's law to do that. So that means he has to make the dog's audio cortex fire and hear something at the same time that he makes the dog smell something, like food. Neurons that fire together wire together. If you just do that, a few repetitions, time, repetition, focus, you will neuroplastically link those two networks. So that means after just a few repetitions, when he rings the bell, the dog will salivate without the food in front of him. It's the basis of, I think, a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. It uses Hebb's law to do this. But beyond that, remember I said we increase the set of all things that can trigger that? Those dogs have been shown to not just salivate at the tone of the bell that was originally used in the experiment. Now they salivate at any note in that scale of bell, which means they have linked that which never was part of the experience to trigger the experience. That is profound.
Can you say that sentence one more
Yes.
time?
So, the dog was trained to salivate at the sound of a bell, and that bell might have been in the note C. But over time, that dog will salivate at any tone in that scale. and any bell that hits a tone in that scale. So the dog has grown the set of all things that trigger that network. That is neuroplasticity. So when we're afraid of one small thing, over years it becomes we're afraid of everything. And that is literally what happens because of Hebb's law and because of growing the density of these networks. So what we have to do is start looking at how do I self-direct this process? This process is happening all the time. And because it is, we actually can go in and affect it. We can use the same process to override the process. We can use the same neuroplastic principles to create neuroplasticity towards stories we like or serve us better, or stories we hope to experience with time, focus, repetition. So I want to talk a little bit about the nuances between the left and the right hemisphere, so you get a sense of that, so that we can now have a full understanding of the 5-step process, so you can start to see application, not just theory. I said the two hemispheres are separate, and they do very similar things, and I am sure some of you have either said or heard, oh, I'm a left brainer, or I'm a right brainer, and neuroscientists really hate that. But there is some truth to it, so I want to talk to you realistically about the truth of it. No one is a left brainer only unless they've had a hemispherectomy and their right hemisphere is gone. Okay? No one's just a right brainer. However, we do have defaults and dominances, and that's what that means. So this becomes important because what neurosculpting is a union of meditation and science, which theoretically live in two different halves of the brain, right? I mean, those camps have been separate for a very long time. Religion and science, metaphysics and science, anything that is measurable and anything that is faith-based have been on opposite camps. And that's kind of the mark of imbalance. Same way let me give you an example. Okay. I'm going to give you an example of left brain, right brain. Just answer for yourselves, knowing that this answer changes context to context. Just think on your own of which one feels right. Are you the kind of person that really likes to plan out your time because you feel it makes the most of your day? Or are you the kind of person that feels like planning your time really inhibits the flow of what might come? There's no right or wrong. Another example, do you feel like your best understanding of the world comes through measurement and data, or your best understanding of the world comes through felt experience? Again, no right or wrong. One more. Do you feel that rules are important to establish safety so that you can be your biggest self, or do you feel like rules impose upon the expression of who you want to be? Again, no right or wrong. If you answered that the rules are inhibiting, or that the planning is inhibiting, or that you prefer the world through a felt sense, then generally you are someone who might say, I'm a right brainer. And then the opposite, if you're someone who wants the measurement and the data and the rules, then you might be someone who is a little more dominantly left brainer. And as I'm saying that, my guess is some of you who just determined what you default to were really proud. Some of you were like, yes, that's the side I want to be. Or yeah, I'm really excited to be. That's the better kind of person to be. Somewhere inside, some of you are actually thinking, I'm excited to be that. And what I want to tell you is, this is the same thing that has happened between faith and science, is that each side becomes proud of not being the other. And literally, you are just experiencing being proud of being half-brained. That's it. I mean, that's as cut and dry as it gets. If you're proud of having a hemispheric dominance, then you're like, yay, I'm half-brained. And the other side of my brain, that's just terrible. That's what you're saying. It's like, yay, left hand, you're the best, right hand. Ugh, so happy that you're not my dominant hand. Who does that? But we do that in society. We set ourselves up to be in an internal conflict, to marginalize pieces of ourselves, to be proud of imbalanced expressions. So what I want to talk about is the way the left and right hemisphere wants to talk. No one wants to erase data for the sake of only experience. No one wants to erase experience for the sake of only data, but we get stuck in this loop of this against that. What we want is experience to validate data and data to validate what we feel to be true. We want marriage. And that's what is possible in the brain through understanding some nuances of left and right. So I want to talk briefly about what gives excuse me, rise to these nuances. What gives rise to these personality tests that tell you if you're a left brainer or a right brainer. And generally speaking, it's the language centers. So we have 4 language centers. 2 on the left, 2 on the right. The front 2 are in the frontal lobe. The back 2 are in the temporal lobe. The 2 on the left have to communicate to each other, and the 2 on the right have to communicate to each other. And then they got to communicate across the middle. So what do? Generally speaking, the front left is governing the output of words and meaning and numbers and literal and semantic expression. So if I'm learning how to speak with my mouth, the words I choose when I can choose words are being chosen by front left. This is true for 97% of the population. There are 3% where they're reversed, but. So, front left, literal output. What am I writing? What words am I choosing? What language am I writing in? The back left is governing input. What did you say to me? Did you say brown bear? I understand that to be a color of an animal. That's left back. Are you writing something that I can read and understand? So everything on the left side is either governing the output or the input of that which has defined meaning. And that is what gives rise to people who need numbers to prove something or take things literally. That is where we get this idea from. It's generally because they probably have language-centered, dominant view of the world from that left side. Right side does something different. The front right is still governing output, but not of the meaning of words. It's governing output of the tone and the implication. So, I am going to modulate my voice with certain words. It's like that, remember that show, it was Electric Company, when one head said one word and the other said the other, and they put it together and they made a word, a whole word? This is going to pick the word that I want to come out of my mouth, and this is going to pick the tone with which I want to communicate that word. And together they will make an effective, comprehensive communication. And that is called prosody. Prosody is how I use my voice to express meaning that is not inherently measurable. I can also use body language to express the output of something. I can also use facial expressions. Back right is governing the input of that which is unmeasurable. The implication of all things. The implication of your body language, your prosody. What did you not say that you really mean? What is your tone communicating? That's what this is getting. So you can see where we need all four to talk across the midline to govern our complete understanding of the world. So let me give you examples of deficits. It is very easy to see when someone has a left language center stroke. And it's very easy to see where exactly in the brain it is. If you can understand what I'm saying to you, but you can't talk, and every time you try to talk you choose the wrong word, well then you had a stroke in the left frontal lobe. Because you just inhibited the ability to choose the right word. But you can still understand my meaning. You can still understand when I go in and say, "How are you?" You can understand that tone means, "I'm happy to see you, I care about you, and I'm concerned." But you can't pick the right word if you have deficit in the back. You can speak perfectly, but you're not going to understand what I say to you. And that's another easy way to tell someone exactly where their stroke is. That they can talk to you, they can report, "I feel really terrible." And you say, "Well, where are you feeling the pain?" And they look at you and go, and they don't understand. That's a left back stroke. So you can see it easy on the left side. Right side, not so easy. When you have a right-sided deficit in either the output or the input, the world doesn't recognize that right away because you are literally talking well and understanding correctly. But right brain deficits are quite destructive. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who is missing a piece of the right temporal lobe. There is absolutely no way right now for him to process the implied meaning of anything. So, he can write eloquently. He can speak just fine. He can understand everything you say except for, he can't read your body language. He doesn't know when you approve of him or not because he can't tell on your face. And he doesn't understand sarcasm, and he doesn't get jokes unless you say, "I'm telling you a joke right now." Because all of that is what's behind. So right brain deficits are really detrimental because those people never feel safe or connected. But you can't see that up front because they're technically, they're okay. So without one, we're in big trouble. And Dr. Jill Boldy-Taylor does a great job of describing how we see the world when we're left-brained or right-brained, and how left is all about semantics and details, and trying to pretend we have authority over the details we just made up about something. And then the right brain is like this soup of understanding. I'm connected to something more than just what I see, and I can feel vibrations, and I can know you without words. Then that's kind of this dance that has to marry for us to have a whole brain approach to life. And so many of us are stuck in the literal nature of our stories, or we're stuck in the felt sense of what was, and now we ascribe that meaning to things you say that have nothing to do with it. We can easily get stuck in either side. But if you didn't have your right brain, then when I said to you, to my daughter, if I said to her, "Oh my God, I love you so much," without a right brain she would hear, "I love you." And if those words meant something to her that was positive, she might feel okay. But she won't get my meaning behind them. And if she didn't have the left brain and I said, "I love you," she wouldn't understand anything I said. But if she didn't have her left brain and I said to her, "Na na na na," she would feel love instantly. So, babies are wiring up their left brain language centers, but they have their right brain language centers. They understand prosody and tone. They understand how to feel safe based on your huge face in their face, because you're this close to them when they're babies. And they understand when your pupils are dilated and when they're constricted, and they understand how that makes them feel. And they understand what an upturned mouth versus a downturned mouth means. And they understand your tone. Then they understand what all the words mean. And we can't keep babies in just the tonal comprehension of the world, and we can't keep people in just the literal comprehension of the world. So in many, many modalities, there is a lateralization, and the modality doesn't necessarily do a lot for the crosstalk. There are some modalities that do. But if you have, I want the big picture now to come full circle. So we've got this really complex brain, and we've got stories that live in a place where we can retrieve them. And that retrieval can either spark us into a brain center dominant limbic response, or it can move into a prefrontal front brain response. And that can change the physiology and the experience we have in the world. And if we could go back and forth between the hemispheres, then we could color our new experiences and maybe even adapt the old ones with a whole brain participation to move them out of their limiting definitions or out of their stuck felt sense and into a comprehensive piece that we can either mark as closed and put to rest, or mark as open and walk into that and experience it. And so I want to get into a little discussion about the neurosculpting process, and then I want to open it up for some questions. It was my mission to not want to be segregated anymore. I grew up very dissociated in terms of how my brain worked. I meditated to escape my literal stickiness. So when I was stuck in, you did this to me, and it was X, Y, and Z, I would meditate not to forgive X, Y, and Z, but to retreat over to the felt sense of bliss. And I left X, Y, and Z to be X, Y, and Z, unaddressed, unmitigated. I just turned around and I did this. That's what I used meditation for. It's not what meditation is for, it's what I used it for. And I also grew up in a world that supported the segregation. I grew up wanting to talk about my experience, my intuitive, felt experience in the world at the dinner table, and I had very pragmatic parents who were so not able to hear that, and their response would be like, well, can you prove it? Can you measure it? Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have permission to have the union. I did have permission to be one or the other, and I had permission to vacillate. So in school, I was so left brain. And then in my meditation, I was totally gone, felt sense. Disassociated from my body and anything that meant anything concrete. But I didn't have partnership. I had retreat into one or the other. And then I started, when I realized I needed to heal my seizures, I realized in order for me to undo my stories, I needed to recruit partnership to rewrite them. I can't rewrite them from the same level they were created. This is what Einstein taught us. You can't change a problem from the same level at which it was created. You have to transcend. So you have to have a whole brain approach to change what was created from a limited section. And in playing with trying to find a process that would do it, it became clear to me that I absolutely needed bi-hemisphere participation. And what's interesting is that in the I just did an anxiety series for Sounds True, And in the most recent research in psychology journals on anxiety, they are noticing that it is a lateralization issue, meaning it is a very imbalanced, one hemisphere dominant issue around anxiety. So their prescribed approach now is to use both hemispheres of the brain in treating anxiety. Hallelujah. But it's interesting because I'll talk now about the 5-step neurosculpting process. We won't do a neurosculpting meditation because really today is about getting you the information that you can translate. But I will have stuff in place for you to experience a meditation afterwards, and for the online students, we'll take care of that too. But I want to give you the 5 steps so you can see how it all fits together. So I'm going to write them down for you. And the 5 steps are listed on the homepage of neurosculptinginstitute.com. You can just see it in the graphics. So if you don't get all the notes, you can just look at it there. So the first step in any attempt to transform is to downregulate the limbic charge or lens. Why? Why is it so critical to make that your first step? Because if you don't make that your first step, then any experience that you are about to have is going to come through a body contraction or a limbic perception, which will then color that experience. So if you want transformation, you have to start here. You have to, from a brain perspective. Because if you don't, then limbic is the lens that is neurologically present. So, this is one of the things I was missing in my life practice. I studied with the Shaya monks for 4 years. I studied the Berkeley Psychic Curriculum for 4 years. I had a lot of formal training in different disciplines of meditation and energetic work. And I did not get that step. And again, that could be user error. I'm perfectly fine admitting that. But I would go into a weekend cycle meditation experience where we'd be meditating 10 to 14 hours a day from Friday through Sunday. And I'd go in and I'd sit down and they'd ask me to breathe, which was great. And then right from breathing, it was like, just watch your thoughts float away. And I'm still limbic. What? I'm still limbic. I'm going to watch my thought and I'm going to be sucked into it, and now I'm going to want to take action on that thought, or I'm going to get balled up, and now I'm going to get frustrated because you keep telling me I'm supposed to watch it float away, and it's not floating away. Now it's making my heart race, and you're not telling me how to fix it. And now I would spend Friday night and most of Saturday arguing with myself in meditation about why I couldn't do what they were asking me to do. By Saturday night, I could get there. So that was took me 7-8 hours of meditation to get to what I now know is this experience. And your experience could be totally different. You may just drop right in, and I just couldn't. So one of the things that was profoundly effective for me was to realize all it takes to downregulate a little bit or a lot your limbic system is 3 minutes. That's it. And in 3 minutes of having your brain focus on all the things which help the limbic system get quiet, you are marinating in a downregulation. So what things help the limbic system quiet down? Its only job is to make sure you're safe. So a great place to start is, I am safe, if you are. So in this moment, okay, how do I focus on I am safe or nourished or nurtured? or my needs are met. That's all the limbic system wants to know. So here's how I do it in my meditations. I take 3 minutes to focus on, okay, my breath first, in and out, in and out, oh, in and out. And you know what? My breath is consistent, and it's supportive, and it breathes itself. Okay, that's nice, that's stable. I'm on solid ground. I can feel solid ground beneath me. Okay, not going to be swallowed up by a hole right now. This is nice, I'm on solid ground. I might notice my environment. I'm in a familiar environment, or the door is locked, and I know for 10 minutes it's going to be quiet in here. Or I might say, you know what, I have food in my refrigerator. I have access to water. The bathroom's over there. I got, okay, for this moment in time, my immediate needs are met. If you could spend 3 minutes marinating in thoughts like that, then what you're doing is you're saying to the limbic system, hey, you know that checklist you get real hypervigilant about? And it says, this one, where everything's predictable and consistent and supportive and you have what you need? Yeah, this one? And you say, yeah, well, I'm going to focus on all those. And the limbic system goes, oh, check, check, check. Oh, guess I can take a little 5-minute break over here. And the limbic system just starts to downregulate. Doesn't mean it's going to downregulate all the way, but it starts. And what happens when the limbic system starts to downregulate? What happens naturally to the other side of the seesaw? It starts to upregulate, which means downregulating your limbic system is going to start the activation of your prefrontal cortex. And guess where the fMRI studies show monks have their awareness in states of compassionate witnessing? Dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. If you want to get there, you have to first calm here. And then you naturally take that step there, and suddenly you are in step 2 of the neurosculpting process, which is you are upregulating your prefrontal cortex. Now, it's naturally starting to upregulate, and remember the benefits of upregulating that. You're going to access your higher self traits. You're going to access more rest and digest. You are going to have a lens for the next moment in life that is more curious than frightened about potential and wonder. And you will probably see more of what's in front of you. But we don't want the process to just start. We want to be able to amplify that. So if we could take the seesaw from here now to here, where the prefrontal is like, yes, I am so dominant right now, that limbic is going to be quiet for quite a while. That's what we want. Because we have been shown through neuroscience that when our prefrontal cortex is activated in a way that is focused and heightened, that we have neuroplastic enhancement almost on par with a good dose of fear. So if we want to store and experience and be able to retrieve it over and over again, we want to store it through a prefrontally charged lens. That's going to give it like a jolt of stickiness. So we're not comfortable just gently upregulating it, which is starting to do anyway. We want to anchor in to the prefrontal cortex. And there are very simple ways that science has shown us to anchor into the prefrontal cortex. If you can take a couple of minutes to focus on benign/safe curiosity or novelty or humor, you can go there. So for instance, if I'm in a meditation and I spent 3 minutes focusing on all that quiets that limbic center, and now I want to really boost my prefrontal, then I'm going to spend 2 to 3 minutes focusing on unique and interesting things that won't scare me. I might fold my hands and then unfold them and put the other finger on top and focus on, wow, that feels interesting. Anytime your brain says, that's interesting, you're there. Or I might imagine the most outlandish shape in my mind's eye I could ever think of. And my brain's gonna go, ooh, I don't even know what that is, that's kind of interesting. Or I might imagine my name spelled backwards and try to say it to myself. Or I might try to bring my awareness to one eyelash and go, whoa, I don't even know if I could do that. That's so weird, can I do that? I'm gonna take 2 to 3 minutes to marinate in curiosity that is benign and safe. And lo and behold, I will have activated my prefrontal cortex. So, in 5 to 6 minutes of this simple entrainment through self-generated thought, what you're doing is you are priming your brain for heightened neuroplasticity, you are down-regulating the limbic system, and you are ready for experiencing life prefrontally. What happens, this is called the induction. These 2 steps together, I'll put I for induction. In neurosculpting, we never skip the induction. It's the necessary first step. It's like when you try to feed a baby, the baby has to open his mouth first, right? Otherwise, the food's not gonna go in. This is the baby opening his mouth so the food can go in. We are priming the brain for a particular brain state so the food can go in, the thoughts can go in a way that is supportive and nourishing. So with this induction, there's a lot of physiological benefits. There's the downregulation of adrenaline and cortisol. There is the movement back to midline. There's the kicking up of digestion and building your immune system. There is the softening of muscles. There is the deepening of breath. There is the lowering of the heart rate, all from just the induction. And you can do that very quickly. But we're talking about something more strategic. We're talking about, what if I have an old story that is so repetitive that I don't want to repeat it anymore, or I want to update it so that it's not the 10-year-old version. It's version today, which is I'm over this, or I'm hoping to be over it tomorrow, but today I'm taking my first step. What if I could take an old story and pull it up and modify it slightly and uncouple my body from its hijack and store now that story in the library as the latest version. Then the next time I take it out, it's at the latest version's version. That's called uncoupling. And we can do that. So, but we can't do it unless we're here first. So this is the induction. This is the stage that we set. Now you can do this. We have clients that just do the induction and get massive stress relief and heal things and have mitigated symptoms of things. But when people want to change their story, we move into step 3. And in step 3, we have an opportunity to tell a story. Let's see if this one. Step 3 is we go to the library. Well, I think these are done. If you have one, yeah. So step 3 is going to the library. And we can go to the library and do a couple things. Remember, we can take out the old story, but add a new last page and store it again. Or we could write a brand new story and give it to the librarian and say, I know this is a pencil sketch, but I'm going to take this out tomorrow. I'm going to overlay it with ink, and I'm going to take it out the next day, and I'm going to paint on it. We have both options. But both options are only strategically viable after the induction. Thank you. So, in the storytelling part of neurosculpting, you could do either. And it's a guided practice. So if you have a facilitator guiding you, then you work with the facilitator around what do I want? Do I want to evoke the old and modify it? Do I want to write a new one? And they help you with that until you're self-sufficient. But here's the key. You don't want to write a new story or evoke the old one in the same old way. You want to use your whole brain to do it. So when we rehash a story in neurosculpting or when we tell a new one, we want left and right brain language centers to participate. So we do these kinds of things. If I'm remembering a story, a stressful story, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to pull up that stressful story, STRESS, and I am going to list 3 words that define how that story affected me. I'm going to ask left brain, come on, participate. Spell things, sequence things, give me lists. You're invited. And then, when I play with that content, I'm going to say, okay, all right, STRESS, if you could be a color, a shape, a quality, a sound, I wonder what that would be in this moment. Oh, that would be black and sticky or orange and oily. I'm going to allow my symbology to jump in here and color the story. Why? Because if I increase crosstalk across the hemispheres during the experience, then I'm also enhancing the investment my brain is making in that story. I am boosting plasticity while telling the story. And then, if that old story is what I pulled up, and now I'm starting to get a little hijacked, then I instantly go to, okay, where does that live in my body? What is my body telling me? Am I contracted in my chest? Is there a pit in my stomach? And then I go find through a body scan where my body is relating to this moment of perception. And then I change the physiology. So what do? I imagine if there's a contraction, I'll just try to deepen my breath. Or I might do a little shake in the middle of a meditation. Or I might imagine a garbage pail in front of me, and that liquidy, oily orange is moving out and into that pail. I'm cultivating a new part of the story. The old story was, that thing just happened. And I experienced it, and I stored it, and then I carried on. In this version, I'm looking at that and going, no. I am going to do something different. Even if I don't feel it, I'm going to pretend. Because that, with bi-hemisphere participation, is going to load a new part of the story which says, you have option B. And that is going to also be an opportunity for step 4, which is, if I just did something different with my old story, I want to remember that. Or, if I just created a new story, I want to remember that, right? Either way, I want to remember it. And Hebb's law says that if neurons fire together, they wire together. So if I could do something simultaneous to that perception, those two things over time will link. So I will find where that thing is in my body, make up what it's doing there, modify it, and then I will take my non-dominant hand, because it's going to push me right back into prefrontal cortex just in case I'm a little hijacked. And I'm going to put my hand on that part of my body and tap. Or I'm going to do something. Or I'm going to make a hand gesture. Or I'm going to grab a stone and feel it. I suggest using your body because it'll always be with you. The more I repeat that meditation at that part of the story where I've done something different with the old one, or I want to remember the new one, I'm doing this, then guess what this does in a week when you are in the moment in real time? It evokes that network. Not fully, but it sends that trigger through the network. This is Hebb's law. You're doing it all the time. Coming into this classroom means a set of all things for you because they all happened here while you were in the room, throughout your history in this room. That's Hebb's law. So now you're in your meditation. You can evoke a link to any aspect of your meditation by coupling emotion When we get sensory and motor cortex involved in the story, everything is boosted. Everything is boosted when we add somatic motion to the experience.
Lisa, we have only 2 minutes left in the battery.
2 minutes on the battery?
Sorry.
Okay, so step 5 for the remaining 2 minutes is we're going to add a linguistic trigger. What is the name or the word you want associated with your meditation? And those are the 5 steps. So, my left brain likes words. How does my left brain want to label this experience? So that when I see that word on a billboard as I'm driving home, it catches me. Whoa, I named my meditation Chocolate Sunrise. And lo and behold, I go home and I'm driving past the bulletin board and there's something that says chocolate. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's my thing. So any time that word comes up, there will be a vague visit to the library or a profound visit to the library. We have the opportunity to create our realities using neurobiological laws of universal function. Add a strategy and a sequence, and now the brain is on our side. And now the brain is going, come on, I'm listening. I'm just going to do what you tell me to do because that's the only thing I know how to do. I only ever do what you tell me to do. And now you're telling me in the secret language, well, I'm going to serve you completely. And so the 5-step process, when we guide people through the meditations, sometimes we usually do like a 5-minute induction and then a 15-minute storytelling time with all these steps. But sometimes we just put people into a 10, 15-minute induction just so they get comfortable with that downregulation process. But what I wanted to share with you is how this process affects people by sharing some success stories, and then I want to open it up to questions and tell you how to get your experience of this for free through the Institute. So
Maybe say that for the camera and then it's going to cut off.
Okay, so I want to give you resources on the website for free that you can experience this meditation.